What's up, my friends? Hey, welcome to this episode of the Studio Sherpas podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Core. I was just called out recently, Chris. I know I haven't even introduced you yet, but a friend, a student of the Studio Sherpas community, I interviewed him, and he just says I got a little too much energy for the show. So now I'm like self-conscious when I say welcome. I'm going to do that again. Welcome to the Studio Sherpas podcast. My name is Ryan Coral. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm very excited for you to meet my guest today. Today we are with Christopher Cook, who technically we could have just done this here at the studio. We're probably just like a few miles away from each other. But Chris is a leadership coach. He's a business consultant to both Fortune 1000 and nonprofit organizations. And he's also host of his own podcast called Win Today with Christopher Cook. I like how you named that. Christopher also serves as a guide to help people design their roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. Fitting. I'm glad you're here, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Brian, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you. And so to be on the show today with you is a great privilege. So I'm stoked.
Let's do it. It's going to be great. Man, I love your heart. I love the things that you stand for. You are, you've been introduced to me by like a handful of different people over the years. You're like, oh man, do you know Christopher? Do you know this guy? A ton of energy, super smart, super talented. And you are, man, like you just, the things that you do with your whole heart, and they're done with excellence. And your podcast is so good. The people you have on your show, they've got a lot to bring. So, music, just the whole package, man. So I love that I get to call you friend.
Yeah, likewise. I'm really pleasure. It's really a pleasure to be here.
So, give me your background. Share with us a little bit about your background. Like, when did you realize that you could really speak into people in business and, coach and consult them?
Well, I mean, I've always been a nerd for leadership and growth. I remember being 11, 12 years old, going to the library, and the books that I would rent, if you will, were John Maxwell and the Zig Ziglars and the Stephen Coveys. And so I've been obsessed with leadership and personal growth since I was a young kid. I mean, just on the funny side, Ryan, when I was little, I saved up all my money so I could get a pleather briefcase in which I would hold all of my client notes. And so I feel like
how old did you have this?
11. I'm like the real Benjamin Button or something like that. I don't know. I've always loved leadership and growing people, and it's been to my detriment a little bit because I'm super idealistic. I remember calling someone out at 12 years old going, "You're a bad leader." And I would actually give them reasons why.
Did they hire you?
At 12? No. I just, I was super kind about it. But you know how Italian people, because I'm Italian, how Italian people, like, they don't yell, but they're really, really discreet. Like, "Hey, Tony, don't worry about it." But that's actually really dangerous. So I was like, "Hey, you're a bad leader. What are you going to do about it?" And, it's really scary. So, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
No, that's how I've just been a nerd for leadership and growth. And so I have always been in the position. I've got this huge desire to teach and to add value to people. And so by 2014, I said, man, between my business acumen with my business background and this ridiculous desire, maybe to call it ridiculous, I don't know if that's right, but this fervent desire to add value to people and to build people for significance and to help people from the inside out, really said, you know what, there's a niche for me. And that niche specifically is organizational health. I mean, from a business perspective, I can sit down and look at someone's P&Ls and really help them create a business plan and a trajectory by which they will hopefully grow. But my greatest passion is to sit down across some leaders and say, tell me why you're really struggling, and then really to get behind the issue to the real issue, and then help them later operate from a place of wholeness. Mm-hmm.
What does that look like when you work with, think through like some of your favorite clients and people that you've been able to work with? Like what are some of the things that they would say to you as a result of your working with them?
Oh, okay. So as a result of working with me, oftentimes the feedback I regularly get, so I'm working with a couple CEOs in the Detroit area right now, and both of them have said to me unprovoked, I never knew that I could be this much different, or I never knew that was the real issue. And as a result, I've never known significance and growth within myself as a result of working with you. And so a lot of times, a lot of the people I coach personally are caught off guard, because here's the thing, Ryan. It's not like I lead them down this magic trail and give them the 3 steps to gold. What I actually do is facilitate a conversation that helps them to discover something that was always there, and something in their life that's encumbering them from realizing what they need to realize. And so I'm a guide. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That book I shared with you the other day, I forget what it's called. It's
the one you texted me.
Listening through that book and just hearing you say this right now, it is super interesting, because that's kind of what they say, as a coach. It's not like you're like, pulling something out that didn't exist before. It's sort of always been there, but it's been untapped. And he one of the lines the guy says is like, if you're trying to get somebody to hire you as a coach, if the only thing that a person did is talk to a light post, that is better than probably what they're doing right now, right? They're not processing through the decisions. They're not, they just don't have somebody or something to listen, because they're just not, they're leaving everything inside. And so, your job as a guide is to just pull out, ask the hard questions. Like, what do you really want? Like, what do you really want? And as we think about, like, man, what is it that I really want? Because I want this company to be successful, right? I want to make a lot of money. I want to pay my employees a lot of money. And it's like, okay, well, but why? It's like, oh, well, and then there's that layer, and then it's like, okay, well, all right, now, well, but why that? And then just keeps on going. I love that. It's I think you're spot on. And I guess my question was going to be, how do you know, like, when is somebody in a spot where not where they need coaching? Because I would say that probably everybody needs coaching, but where somebody could actually be helped by coaching, right? Because probably not everybody is in that spot where they're ready to be coached, right?
Yeah. So the point at which I oftentimes get the phone call or the email saying help is when they're doing all the right things on paper and continuing to get the wrong result, and they don't know why. So they're stuck and they don't know why. So I get the phone call, I get the email saying, Chris, I'm stuck. I don't even know where to look. I don't know the direction in which to look. And that brings in, I suppose, one of my core competencies, one of my core messages, if you will, when I speak to larger organizations. And that is essentially using the analogy of gardening, because it's the quality of the soil that determines the fruitfulness of the seed. And so what am I talking about? I'm not trying to be high in the sky with that phrase. What I mean is, it's the inner world. It's the mindsets, the paradigms, the perspectives, the proclivities that are being run by the million times more powerful subconscious programming that are driving the output of our life. And people don't even know that's the case. People don't even know that's the reason. And so I go in and essentially am like a rototill, and I take a rototill to the soul of leaders, and I say, hey, the output of your life is contingent upon the interior health of your life. And so this is actually where we need to look. And oftentimes, Ryan, what happens, and I'll give you a little case study if I could.
Yeah.
So in 2014, I started working with, at the time, they were doing about 35 million net rev every year. Sizable company, great business model. And I was brought in because perhaps a lack of trust between middle management, executive management, and then just the general consensus of we're making the needle move, but our teams don't like each other. There's a general lack of trust in the organization. Turnover, to be honest with you, on paper, turnover was like 22, 23%. So I was brought in to say, like, how do we remedy this? Obviously, we're doing 35 a year, but we've kind of hit a wall. And I essentially went in and said, okay, well, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so I did what I do in helping people get unstuck from the inside out and essentially pursuing wholeness from a business perspective. And here it is. Here are the results to my statement. The output of your life is contingent upon the interior health of your life. And let's just pivot it for our audience today. The output of your business is contingent upon the interior health of your business. So with no change in business plan, with no change in product offering, with no change in staffing the company in 18 months, got healthier. The turnover rate went from about 23%, as I said, down to about 4%.
Wow.
They grew from 35 million to 42 million in 18 months with no change in business model. Why? Because the output of their business was contingent upon the interior health of their business. So we got leaders healthy. We stopped promoting bosses because no one needs more bosses in their life. We need to add value and build real leaders. So we bridge the gap between team members, middle management, and upper management using one word: trust. We fortified communication. We help people speak in their trust language. And that is something I use. The DISC personality profile is a key mechanism that I use with organizations. And Ryan, the results were magnificent. You know, like I said, I didn't go in and look at P&Ls. I said, you're a bad leader. Your teams don't trust you. You say one thing and do another.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to essentially be a rototill in the organization, so much so that they were actually looking to terminate one team member. And listen, for business owners listening right now, you understand turnover, new hires, that's an expensive process.
Right.
So how can we mitigate that? How can we kind of reduce that experience? And I said, listen, I actually think she's the right person in the wrong place. I said to HR, give me 30 days with her. So I did a DISC assessment, did some personal coaching with her. I said, oh, I think you're in the wrong department. We put her in this department. I said, hey, I think you should be doing these tasks with this team. That team said, who is this? We've never seen anything like this. And I said, right person, wrong place. That's exactly what happens, because everything starts from the inside out. The quality of the soil determines the fruitfulness of the seed. So that's just, yeah.
Sorry, what was that? That's
just kind of a case study, a case in point of essentially what I repeatedly do for leaders, here around the Metro Detroit area, especially working with CEOs.
Yeah. So when you approached them and said, you're a bad leader, this is all these years later, did you still use that like little Italian accent?
Hey, how you doing, Tony? Let me tell you what, I'm going to get you fit for cement shoes. No, I didn't. Oh my gosh. That would be fun though, right?
What is your bag of choice though these days? Are you still toting that pleather little briefcase? That's something else.
Well, I'd have to wear Velcro shoes if that was the case. So I've put those away in favor of a nice Herschel bag, or a Ben Sherman bag or something like that. You remember that movie Hitch?
Yeah.
So he just shows up unassuming, but he just kind of slides the card across the table.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am. Like, I don't advertise, and I'll get an email or a call saying, hey, we heard about you. We heard what you did for this organization. Can we talk? And so I just go in and I do what I do. Now, it requires a deep level of listening, because I remember I had one organization ask me, Chris, what's your agenda? And I said, listen, I don't have one. My priority is you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do some deep listening to really hear what you're after. And then I'm going to not roll out this turnkey system.
Right.
I'm going to deploy what I believe is going to be effective for your specific ask. Now I have a toolbox full of tools that typically work in various environments. However, the greatest value I can bring to an individual or an organization is when I do deep listening and actually listen to the client's need and endeavor to provide that.
So I totally, for a bigger organization, totally makes sense when you've got a leadership team that's, more than 2 people or whatever. Most of the people that we're talking to are probably, if they have a leadership team, it's definitely 3 people or less, and it's probably 1 or 2 people big. So what are some of the things that, for the listener listening, for the person listening, if a podcast plays in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, is there a listener? No, just kidding. For the person that's listening, what are some things, some signs for them to realize that maybe they aren't healthy? Maybe they're not, there's the obvious, like, well, maybe they're not making as much money as they want, or they're just, they're overwhelmed with the amount of work or something like that. Like, those are pretty, I think, obvious things of like, hey, you need some help. And they might just think, well, I need to hire an employee or something like that. But what might be some of the other things that should be red flags for them to say, hey, maybe I should reach out and get some kind of help here. You can only try so hard. And, at some point, willpower doesn't work. Not to like steal the title of the book name, but anyway, what do you got for me?
So I'm going to start right there because I actually don't believe willpower works at all.
Yeah.
So let me get into some neurophysiology, some neurobiology. When we exert willpower, which often happens when we are attempting to do the right thing and continuing to get a wrong result, we push harder, right? So let's say I've got a business plan and I'm exerting my willpower to just push to get it done, but nothing seems to be working. So what do we typically do? We push harder.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all making a generalized statement. I'm just saying, like, that's typically what we do. But what happens is when we exert willpower in and of itself, we put ourselves in a state of stress. Mm-hmm. When we put ourselves in a state of stress, we're working from deficiency. And any subconscious programming that's on the inside out, that program that's running is going to override any executive function decisions that we're making in the brain. And so I'll give you an example. Let's just say we've got a project and it's just not working or something like that. And we are asserting our will and having goals to say, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to achieve this year in the next 3 months. I'm just going to do it because I'm going to write the goals down. But here's the problem. The subconscious is saying you're a victim of life. Your past is greater than your future. You failed before, so why try now? If that is existing in the subconscious, it's going to override any exertion of willpower or goal setting from the get-go. And so what are some things to look out for? Well, a general sense of overwhelm and just anxiety. The definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. If you're kicking your feet against a wall and it's not moving, I think you should look at another strategy. Or maybe that wall just isn't coming down, or there's another way to approach it, right? And so oftentimes we don't see what we need to see. We don't see the world as it is. We see it as we are. And that's why we need a coach. Coach comes along and says, because you don't know what you don't know, I'm going to help you see something that I see that you need to see. And so, difficulties in professional relationships, a lack of trust, lack of effective communication, a lack of moving the ball down the field, a lack of unity on the team. Those are just a few examples of several that could cause someone to say, okay, I need to make a pivot here. And that's usually when I get the phone call.
I love that. I just feel like as a business, when I first started as a solopreneur, for whatever reason, I had the intuition to say that, I should probably get some people in my life and that can kind of help guide me. So I kind of created this little board of advisors of people that were all older than me and smarter than me. And so I had that, but I don't think a lot of people, and not because I was smarter or anything. I just think I saw that like somewhere in my life. And I was actually my friend John, John Borglin.
Yeah, sure.
So John had a board of advisors when we first, him and his wife did our marriage counseling and pre-marriage counseling, whatever it's called. And he had this board of advisors and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And then I started my business and I was like, man, I should get a board of advisors. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but they helped kind of pave a little way for me. And because I saw that emulated, but I feel like a lot of people think that, well, maybe that's too corporate or that's just like, or they just haven't seen it. So I think the natural instinct is like, well, I just got to figure this out, right? I've got to, nobody's got time. Everybody's busy. They've got their stuff. Nobody has time to really listen and figure out, how they can help me. But when you start to uncover and realize like, hey, you don't have to have it all figured out, and you don't have to like, there are blueprints. There are people who have gone before you and have done this. There's nothing new under the sun. It's like, it's all been done and kind of figured out, and other people are at different places along the journey and can speak. And that's why people that have coaches like love having coaches, because they know that, hey, this person has been to different places. They've had, probably multiple conversations with other business leaders who they hear the same thing. We're all just like, we're at the end of our rope. We're just kind of like, this. So I don't know. I'm just rambling, but do you have any response to my ramblingness?
Everyone needs a voice in their life to help them see what they can't see. I said it before, I have a personal mentor in my life with whom I meet every single Thursday. And one of my favorite questions to ask him, Ryan, is this: Dave, what do you know about me that I don't know that I need to know? It's a powerful question. And we can apply that question in many domains of life. If I had a business coach, what do you know about me or my business that I don't know that I need to know? In other words, if you're hemorrhaging money and that's just been normalized, you're like, oh, that's normal for me. A business coach would say, dude, why do you continue to spend there? Or, you're overstaffed or whatever it may be. We just need someone with fresh eyes to look and add value to us. None of us can see what we need to see when we're looking through a lens of familiarity and rose-colored glasses about our life and our business. So we need people who are better than us, period. If you or I are the smartest student in the room, we need to change rooms. And I guess that's even sort of a personal endeavor that I have is I want to be around people who know more than I do, period. And
that's why he's on the show today, you guys. I'm hilarious. I don't know if you know this, Christopher, but
let's just make this practical. Listen, you and I sat down, we hung out, we had coffee. What was it? The day before Thanksgiving or something like that. And one of the things I love and respect about you is because you are doing things very effectively in terms of video podcasting and this. And you added a ton of great value to me. I've thrived in a certain level of space and a niche, and the show's doing really well. But I'm wanting to take things to the next level, and I'm like, okay, Ryan knows what to do. Well, there you are. I just think we all need to just lower our guard and be willing to be humble and say, help.
Yeah. I don't got
such an overrated word. I think too many business owners are afraid to be vulnerable and say help. Like, I don't know how to do this. And I really think one of the things that inhibits long-term growth in the business is pride and insecurity, where leaders can't say, you know what, I'm not good at this. Will you help me? Or I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me? We think, now here's the thing. We think, especially with our teams, that being that level of, by being that vulnerable, that our teams are going to think we're messed up and they won't be able to follow us. No, this isn't my statement. This is actually from a guy named Craig Groeschel, but he says that people are more apt and more willing to follow a leader who's always real, not always right. We need more professional vulnerability in the workplace. And I get it. Like, who wants to look weak? So we're out to save face and self-protect, but behind that, Ryan, is shame. Shame manifests in self-protection and self-promotion. And I think those two things cripple a business from growing. Want to know what happens? Can I explain something real fast?
Please.
Okay. So if the nucleus, I'll go back to the example I shared about the company in 2014. So the nucleus, the DNA level of this company was not trust, it was shame that manifested in self-protection and self-promotion. It's a broad statement, but essentially that's what was happening. Because of that, they were unable to step into healthy conflict. Now, you're married, and maybe a lot of listeners today are married. You know this. Conflict in and of itself isn't bad. In fact, when you sharpen the saw and iron sharpens iron, it can actually make the relationship far better. It's just that when the nucleus, when the DNA level of an organization or a leader is shame, conflict turns into complication and blame and dysfunction and passive aggression. As a result of that, instead of making decisions, we stand in indecision about everything. We're not fighting for vision, we're fighting against people. And in so doing, what happens after indecision is we can't hold each other accountable for anything. So we just relegated to just silos, the water cooler conversations. Hey, you're on my team, right? The longer we believe our own mail, the worse it gets, because after a while, you're going to get a mail bomb and you're going to wake up and realize that you're all by yourself because you've created this siloed life. And as a result of silos, all you're going to get is failure. And so we've got to go down to the root level and go, oh, actually what we need is trust. There's a story about Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway. Stephen Covey brought it out, but I think it was exemplified in his book, The Speed of Trust. And most of the time when two companies would pursue a merger or the acquisition of the other, and it's a multi-billion-dollar deal, that's going to require a lot of time, a lot of due diligence, lawyers, etc. Warren Buffett signed a deal, essentially, I think it was with Walmart. It was a multi-billion-dollar acquisition on a handshake. That's the power of trust. And so the point is, where there is no trust, shame is prevalent. And that's where everyone self-protects and self-promotes. Leaders do it, and they think, oh, what is this, group therapy? No. Listen, we self-protect and self-promote, and we don't know we're doing it because we've normalized it in our disposition and in our proclivities as a leader, and we think it's just being a passionate leader. No, it's not. It's actually fear. And believe it or not, as I dive into these subjects with leaders, oh my gosh, Ryan, I worked with a guy in 2017, and it took him all the way back to 6 years old as a little boy when he started to self-protect and self-promote. He was leading from that. His company knew it. So his company capped, right, because of his leadership cap. And once we got him unstuck from that and increased his leadership cap, his director of operations called me and said, what have you done with him? He's a different leader. Well, listen, the output of your life is contingent upon the interior health of your life.
Wow. Makes me think this past summer when we did a conference here at the studio, we've got all these video business owners here hanging out, meeting each other, and in that, the conference, we started out sharing deep stories like hurts and struggles, pain. That's kind of like how we started the week together, and it was amazing how many people came up to me and said, thank you. Thanks for starting this conference like this. And then to hear the conversations go from like surface, like, oh yeah, things are great. Like we're booking all sorts of stuff. And it's to like, hey, this is real life. And, I came here because I was looking for a community of people that are, doing similar work, but that can say like, you're not alone, and we're in this together. I'm going to be okay. And then even, in our little Facebook group, to see people reaching out and saying, hey, it's a slow time of year and things really suck right now. And to see people chiming in and encouraging, and it's powerful. And when you get a taste of it, just the smallest little dose, it changes everything. Cause then you don't feel like you're alone, and you don't feel like you've got to figure it all out. And that's the best feeling, right? To be able to walk into a boardroom to pitch your company and not feel like I'm not pitching anything. I want to be a good listener, and I want to figure out through my listening and just being here, is this even a client that I want? Right? Like the money might be good. It might sound like a cool job, but is this a good fit for me? And when you're operating more from that stance where it's like, hey, can I help these people? Is this a good fit? Versus I really need this work. I hope this works out. That's like very different like energy, and you talk different, and you come across totally different.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So I'm curious, one of the things, we danced around this a little bit, talking about identity. And you say that, business is an extension of your identity. Talk about that. I love this thought, and go.
Yeah. So in life, a lot of times we perform, we exert ourselves, we build businesses. and they may be successful, but maybe there's something on the inside of the leader or the solopreneur, if you will, that's saying, when this succeeds, finally, I will be taken seriously in life. And that's a sobering reality, because that pervades all of your relationships, that pervades every area of your life. So, as you're building a business and perhaps it's hitting 7 figures, you're going to bed at night and you're not going, wow, that's really cool. You're going, I think people like me, or I think I'm taken seriously. Like, that sounds a little group therapy, but you would be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, how many leaders I talk to on a regular basis who that's the nagging thing. Like, they go to bed at night going, am I respected? Am I loved? Am I seen? Am I known? And the driving force within the soul of every person, we are neurobiologically wired to be seen, to be known, to have belonging, to fit in. And so if we're exerting ourselves in business in order to gain definition of our worth and value in our identity, even if the business succeeds, that's not going to fill the gap. Like Steve Jobs. Here's a personal example. Steve Jobs, on his deathbed, as he was dying from pancreatic cancer in 2011, said, none of this matters. I don't have peace. I don't know who I am. I've given my kids the best, but I have no peace in life and I don't know what to do. He died without peace. Hello? Like, that's really, really sad to me. So instead, on the other side, a person who knows that they have inherent worth and value, that they are adding value to people because that's the right thing to do, because they know that they have something to give to others as they build their business, that business is going to be an extension of their identity instead of a means to define their identity. And I hope that's not too simplistic to state it that way, but the point stands. Either what we do in life is going to be from identity or for identity. Use the case study I presented about Steve Jobs. Like, this guy created easily one of the most revolutionary brands in world history, yet he dies of pancreatic cancer going, I don't know who I am. I have no peace. So the issue is not money. The issue is not business success, because it's not going to fill the tank. What's going to fill the tank is a core sense of personal worth and value outside of your performance. And again, I don't mean to keep apologizing for the fact that this sounds a little group therapy, but there are business people listening right now who are saying, man, when this succeeds, my wife's finally going to respect me. Or, my business partner's going to finally see that I'm not living in a pipe dream. No, I'm saying, listen, step back, way back, and to find out when's the first time you thought that you couldn't be taken seriously. Bring reconciliation to that inside your soul, and then work from that place. You'll be surprised and shocked how efficient your business then becomes. Because in that place, you're not working for identity. You're not working for value. You're working from it.
Yeah.
Is that too simplistic to say it that way, Ryan? Does that get the point across? Okay.
My mind is simple, so I like that you're speaking simple. Yeah, I think that, it just presents whenever I just hear, you got Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs and all these guys who are super successful. And I remember early on in my business career thinking like, oh man, like, I love Apple and I want to have a brand that's like Apple or Disney or, just like recognizable and, all this stuff. And then realize like, oh gosh, you can't have all of these things and also have like, employees that love you and a wife or a family that loves you and you're present with, it's like there are all of these things. And then especially if you're working from just the wrong motives and finding your identity through, the results of what you're doing, that is so just like dead end, like not fulfilling, it's so sad to think about Steve Jobs on his deathbed, thinking about like, what did my life mean? Like, what did I do? Like, did I really just he made this incredible, well, I don't say devices, things, all that stuff. Like, that's great. But like to think through our approach, to our work and kind of ask that question, why? Like, what's the point? And what is all of this for? And to be able to step back and reflect. And that's why I just think it's I've heard people say that they like this show because at some level it's therapeutic, because I'm a big believer in like, hey, you need to take time, you need to reflect, you need to be thinking about things like your identity. It's like, listen, I want to grow my video business, I want to hit 6 figures this year, I want to do 7 figures, but reflect. I ain't got time for that. I don't got time to go do a day of silent retreat thing, Ryan. That's weird. But it's in those moments, it's in those times that when we can find our purpose, and when we're reminded of who we are and what our purpose is, and are we doing the thing that we were made to do? And if so, that's like, okay, then how do we do it in a way that is most helpful, most beneficial for the world? And as we're giving that away, and I don't mean not charging for what we're doing, but really serving the world in a way that it's like, I'm doing this thing that I feel like I'm really gifted at, and growing in, right? So like, even if you're in year number 1, you might be terrible at storytelling or whatever, but you've just got this strong desire and you just feel like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. That's great. Like keep doing it. And figuring out, not even figuring out, but just being open to saying like, okay, this is not all for me. This is not all just for my own, pride or kingdom or thing that I'm trying to build. It's like, how do I give this away so that the world can benefit from it?
A simple way of summing what you just said, and perhaps even tying it together with what I said, is that in life, you'll never know what to do until you know who you are. Remember that book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
Brilliant book. I love it. Fully agree with it, except for if we don't start with who, and instead we start with why, if our who is broken, and if our who is in need of resuscitation, our why is going to be a coping mechanism against the broken belief system and the broken identity. Whereas if we start with who, the why is going to be pure, it's going to be long lasting. But if we start with why and don't know who we are, and our organization doesn't know who it is, that why unintentionally and unknowingly is going to be a coping mechanism in a dysfunctional way to meet a need that will never be able to be met outside of the discovery of identity. In life, you'll never know what to do until you know who you are.
Dude, that's really good. And it makes me think about, like, we have core values in our business, and that's who we are, right? That's and here's what's beautiful today about our core values is that it is a reflection. Like, these are core values that I'm trying to live out in my personal life. That I said, I don't want to be somebody different in my personal life than I am in my business. So let's build this business on these core values. So that just speaks into, so there's no question. It's like, okay, from there, now it's like, we believe in being humble, hungry, and smart, right? So like these not our own, Patrick Lencioni, I forget.
Yeah, Lencioni. Yeah, right.
And
ideal team player.
Yes. Yep. And so in these things, it's easy to say, okay, like, so what's our work? Like, let's pick our work, whatever that work is. If we're operating from those places together as a team, the work can be anything. And the work has changed over the years. And I've got people still with me that have been with me for almost 10 years. And it's because the who we are hasn't changed. What we do, that's changed. Like, maybe why, that's changed a little. I mean, when I first started, I wasn't trying to make a ton of money. I was just trying to make a living. Today, the more money I make, the more money I can give to my employees, the more money I can give away, the cooler studio we can get, the cooler gear. So, it's a different mindset, right? There's some differences there, but overall, my who, that has been refined through the years. But as a company overall, we haven't changed a ton. I don't know if that sounds good or bad, but I think that's
it sounds really good.
Okay.
In my mind, it sounds really good. Here's the thing: identity doesn't necessarily change. Obviously, the methodology, the why, can flex because the market demands something different, right? Let's keep this in the sphere of business. So you're not rigid in such a way that you're like, no, this is who we are, and we're never going to pivot. That's why Kodak went out of business, right? That's why Blockbuster Video went out of business, because they were unwilling to meet the demands of the market. However, what I hear you saying about your organization is that you continue to know who you are, yet you're willing to pivot and adjust to serve people in a more effective way. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about, right? Why do we pivot our business models? Why do we change the offerings of what we have available? Because we want to reach people in an effective way, and the market demands things in a different way at a different time, and we have to be able to pivot to accommodate those things. So
Chris, this is awesome, man. I know our time's up, but where can people follow you, listen to your podcast, all that stuff?
Yeah, the podcast is available everywhere podcasts are available. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Blueberry, etc. Win Today with Christopher Cook. The website is simply wintoday.tv. Right now, I have a free 31-day course that I'm offering. You can go to yourroadmaptowholeness.com or just wintoday.tv. Click on the button that says download your free guide. We'll take care of the rest. But Ryan, it's been a pleasure to join you here on this show. I believe in you, my friend. This is a great show.
Thank you. Hey, and just real quick, what might be a takeaway or something that people are going to get when they download that? Not just download it, but kind of go through the PDF.
Yeah, Your Roadmap to Wholeness is the title of the course. And really, it's going to fortify and validate the statement that I made earlier in our conversation today, and that is that the output of your life is contingent upon the interior health of your life. So as such, we're going to go to the interior health. We're going to remedy those things. We're going to bring wholeness to that interior life, so that everything you do flows from there. So really the aim is to help people discover their personal identity, bolster their emotional health, and then optimize their body health. Not one at a time, but all three in an integrated, synchronous fashion. And that's really important. So
love it. Cool, man. You're a total stud. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time today, and excited for you and all the stuff that we're going to be doing together in the future.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right. See ya.